One. Welcome to On the Bench. I am your host for this episode, Brendan Sinone. I'm joined by Zach Blostein. Currently only Zach Blostein. We'll see if anyone else joins us. If not, enjoy. It's the two youngins. Do you like me?
No one's as excited about signing day as us.
And I'm young. Did you like that? I just kind of threw that out there.
Don't group yourself into this.
All right. So before we get going, I knew he was coming. I knew he'd be here before 9:30 or 8:30. There he is. Hello, Christopher.
Morning.
We're recording.
He literally just woke up.
He joined us. I said someone would be joining us soon. Whoa!
Sorry, I was looking for something on the desk.
It's getting wild.
All right. Well, Chris gets himself gathered, and your audio does sound fine here. Signing day. FSU just went through the early signing period, at least the first day of it. There's still 2 more left. 32 players in, by far the largest ever under Mike Norvell in terms of a prep class. It's including some JUCO guys as well. We're going to get into that. There's also going to be a lot of big picture stuff that we're talking about today in terms of front office, retention or not retention, I guess, coaching staff, rumors, interesting report from ESPN out there on FSU having heavy flirtation with one Lane Kiffin, who hasn't Lane Kiffin flirted with, and also maybe a little bit of talk about a consulting firm as well. So we're going to get into it. But first, a shout out to our sponsors, Chattanooga Whiskey, crushing it in the craft distillery game. 'Tis the season. Buy presents for people. They like whiskey. And if they've only kind of stuck to some of the big brand, I won't mention the big brands here because they don't pay us to, and we have a sponsorship with Chattanooga Whiskey. But if they've only tried the big brands and they're trying to get into the craft distillery stuff, something more unique, Tennessee whiskey, Chattanooga whiskey, the way they do it with their mash bill and their malting process is super unique. It makes for a nice caramelly, smooth, delicious baseline of a flavor. It's only like $40, the 111. I was at ABC yesterday. $40 for 111 proof high quality whiskey. It doesn't get much better than that. Chattanooga Whiskey, check them out all throughout the state of Florida, all throughout really the Southeast at this point. Awesome product. Thankful for their sponsorship. And then also, Buyer Sonone is sponsored by
the Turner Group.
We haven't done like a good old fashioned just like Buyer Sonone segment in a while. Maybe we need to, maybe at the end of this, we'll see, or coming up in the next week or so, we'll do that. But in the meantime, go buy a house. Colin Turner, Amy Turner, everyone at the Turner Group does an awesome job in the home buying, home selling process. Listen, I know it's not easy. I know it cannot be fun, having done it myself, but you got to do it. Got to be an adult, and it helps to have someone who's really well experienced, who's going to work hard, well connected. That's Colin Turner and Amy Turner over at the Turner Group. Big FSU fans. Again, Colin a little depressed right now. Buy a house, make him better, make him feel better, make yourself feel better. That's what I would suggest. All right, guys, 32. Chris, can you name them all in alphabetical order for us?
Nope. Brain's not firing like that right now.
I just didn't know if that was just like in your, like, if you could do it at any given time. It's good.
No, if you want me to run down there 32 nicknames, I might be able to do that.
Oh, yeah. Are there any nicknames on this? Are there any nicknames?
Oh, there are nicknames, yes. Chris?
I don't know. I'm trying to think. Well, I mean,
he's broken.
Jonah's King Jonah from back in the day. I mean, it's Jameis's little brother. If you remember Jameis talking about him back in the day in 2012, 14, that range. That's how they talk about. Obviously, Darryl Bell III is Trey Bell.
Okay.
I'm trying to think who else.
J-Rock is Jason Lopez.
Yeah, Jacoby Green is fine with Kobe. I don't know if he prefers Kobe, but I know.
Doesn't he go by Big Show?
Yes, that is the nickname on his Twitter, yes.
Okay. And then we got Chuck Kennan for Chauncey Kennan. Zay Williams for Isaiah Williams. We got a lot of nicknames, man.
Wow, Chris, Zach's kind of balling on you right now in the nickname.
Stealing your game, Chris.
Well, recruiting is his thing these days. He should be.
Are we all wearing black again and I didn't get the memo? Hang on.
No.
All right, we're good.
Why do you have that on standby?
Because it's like a cloth for my computer.
Oh, okay.
I'm very dusty. So, anyways, 32 recruits, guys, and what, top 15 class right now? It's 14th. Is that what it's settled?
It ranks 14th, which is what it was entering today, what it was when it finished today. The nice thing about today is that there was no moments of, oh my God, what the hell is happening again on signing day. There was actually additions instead of subtractions, and I really truthfully like one of the additions quite a bit. And I know
I can't remember the last time where they went into a signing day, with all the guys they had committed the day before and signed all of them
Well,
on
yeah,
sign.
I mean, guys, the one like the highest ranked guy or one of the highest ranked guys in the class left. Like,
So, hey, don't bring that negativity in here.
Okay.
I'm just glad they got it done before the day when everybody on earth pays attention to it.
I mean, they still had
Being a niche.
Brennan, they still had to sign like 30 prospects that they had committed. Like that, you're saying that some guys left the class beforehand. Yes.
I mean,
but,
how much drama? I mean, maybe there's, you know what? I will step back. A potential sign of it being more buttoned up than past years. I don't know how many guys they were fighting to keep.
I agree with that, but there were some that other schools were at least expressing interest in.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Am I being painted? Are you guys? What's happening right now?
Xavier Tiller was an example of a guy that we know people were back channeling.
Yeah, that was one. That was one.
You know, I think if a guy like Jason Lopez said he had interest in others, he would have heard from others. But I don't think that's what happened there.
That was the only one that got interesting yesterday, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Drama kind of.
Yeah, it was like financial, like strong arming, basically.
Okay, but he signed.
You got to do it when you get the ability to do it.
But when I tweeted out at one point that he hadn't signed yet, and it was late in the afternoon, people were like, "I saw him sign on the." A few tweets were like, "I saw him sign." And the guys, until it gets sent in, that signatures don't mean a whole lot of anything. But anyways, it's like not a bad class, guys. It's also not a star-heavy class, and the being 14th, I think, is a little deceptive in the sense that it's 32. That's a massive amount.
Here's my take on the class.
All right.
It does not have enough elite talent. That is pretty clear. If you look at through the 24/7 sports rankings, they only have 5 prospects in the top 247 committed. And then if you look even further, they only have 1 prospect in the top 195. And
Can you
then
just say top 200, or is that a weird line of delineation?
It's a line of delineation because
196, so that's why he's 195.
Just say top
So
200.
then no, I got to prove my point. So then after that, they have 5 that range from 196 to 246. So just it's not top heavy with elite talent. The one thing I do like about this class, which feels like a stark difference from previous Norvell classes, is that they really banked on good body types, especially on the D line.
Yeah.
I was very critical of Norvell's classes early on that seemed to feature all these borderline blue chip guys, but the body types always suggested that it would be tough for them to project to play, Power 4 football. And that turned out to be true because a lot of those players are no longer on the roster and have transferred down to G5 spots. But in this class, especially on that D line, they have a number of guys with SEC body types, which I think is something that if you're not going to land, the elite guys at those positions, then bank on numbers and bank on measurables. And I think they did a good job with that personally.
Yeah. To that point, I mean, Rankins and Whitley are definitely guys that fall into that boat. I think they're both more developmental types. Pinkney is not developmental.
Both Whitleys.
But I like him a lot. I think he can be very good if he tops out. I love Xavier Tiller. I'm a big fan of Tiller in the class. I do think the pass catchers is a really good group. Jason Lopez is a guy that I've consistently really liked. I also really like him as a basketball prospect. Tiller at tight end is another one who I'd throw into that. Devin Carter. Good Devin Carter is a really good football player. The thing with him has been somewhat staying healthy in the past year. And then on top, you got 2 real good defensive players, given one is coming off a pretty bad injury in Isaiah Williams. But Chuck Kennan and him are both guys that should help you at both of those positions. It's 32 guys. I look at it as having 8 to 10 that I really like, another half dozen that I think have a shot, and then you threw numbers at it with the back half, and hopefully some of those exceed expectations. I am glad they took in a bunch of D-line, bunch of edge. I think the more you can take that you think have a shot, it improves the probability that you hit on some, giving you some opportunity to be good. Amari Thomas is also a serviceable sounds like a diminishing word. I don't mean it that way. Amari Thomas is a good running back. I don't think he's an elite running back, but he is an ultra-productive high school player who I also think is a capable pass catcher at the position. I like him. And truthfully, the way that room was recruited through the process, he's probably the best he could have got.
So on the point, Chris, I want to go back to real quick that this was a throw numbers at it type of deal. That's going to sound pejorative, but there is something to it. Like there is a thought. Like even if you're looking at the NFL draft, a lot of times GMs will just start trading down to accumulate a bunch of picks in the middle rounds because its idea of more at bats is more efficient than trying to take your guy around earlier, like trying to narrow in on a single guy. It's about a numbers game with the eval process because there's so much random stuff that can go along in a projection, even with all the information and research that you do on a player. The more the better is a thought process. So I do wonder if there's some level of reflection with that, with the NFL model of trying to trade down and stockpile picks. If you're not getting elite players, which Zach outlined well, only one in the top 195, was it?
5, yes.
Okay, yeah. Great job. This is what you do then if you can't do that. And so it's not ideal, but I will say to me there is a strategy to it that makes sense. And so I like thumbs up there. What doesn't make sense to me though, guys, is all right, you ready? I'm going to be a little negative.
Surprise, surprise.
Do you want me to be positive first or negative?
Go
I
on.
just wanted to do something.
If you're taking 32 players, the most ever, and we know they have a consultant in town to currently help them at least figure out what the next steps are going to be in their front office. And we've reported that front office changes are expected. We don't know what those changes are going to be yet. I think they're still in the process of figuring that out. We know they've looked at several NFL types for a general manager or some kind of role in that capacity. Changes are coming. Is it weird to you guys that they just took the most prep players ever under the regime or under a front office group that may not be here in like 2 months? It feels to me like the timing of this is so peculiar to where you're basically talking about a GM role that might be brought into the program that would answer to Michael Alford, not Mike Norvell. So someone who would potentially, again, this is all being worked out, potentially have autonomy to make all selections with personnel or have final say at the very least in that process, in that pecking order. And so that means you're Mike Norvell as an evaluator and the current regime, Derek Ray, and below his front office staff have a ton of input exclusively in this prep class, which is the biggest you ever had. To me, it feels like, long story short, you had a GM the day before a draft be told, hey, you're not coming back for the next offseason, but go ahead and do whatever you want in this draft. And you ended up, I wouldn't say trading all your collateral, but you took a bunch of roster spots to fill for the 2026 roster, where the next decision maker may not even be here with his fingerprints on this group. Like he's not even here yet. So that did I articulate that? Does that make sense?
It definitely makes sense. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, last time we got together on the pod, we talked about the fact that the calendar and the way they were hiring a GM and the fact they waited to hire a GM weren't going to work very well together. And this is a fine example of it in the sense of the fingerprints on the 2026 version of the Florida State Seminoles. So, yeah, but like, I also think you're taking 32 this day and age, and there's plenty of big classes that were signed yesterday. If you look around, FSU's far from the only one, and FSU is not near the biggest one. I think UNC ended up with the biggest one. West Virginia is also way up there, if I recall correctly. I think with 105, it's sort of just a new norm where you do need to backfill a roster with high school kids. To me, it's something FSU's neglected at times in recent years in the sense of accumulating enough there to see if they've got something for the future instead of always being stuck with going to the portal. So, yeah, I just think it's the way they did it to themselves with the calendar, the decisions. I don't think it had some ulterior motive yesterday with the current regime versus a future regime type.
Yeah, I don't either. I didn't mean it to come off like that.
This falls in the administration.
Yeah, if you wanted signing day to be for 2026 with a new regime, GM regime handling it, that needs to be done at least a month in advance because they got to get in there. They got to be able to scout what you currently have. They got to be able to see what they can go attain. that can't be done in a vacuum. And I feel the same way about what's coming up in January with the portal starting on January 2nd to the 16th when it's officially open. That's going to be another time period where, like, to be effective on January 2nd, you probably need to be up and running at least 2 weeks prior, if not more, especially considering the holidays hit at that time of year.
Yeah.
So again, I don't think the fingerprints of 2026 are going to have a whole lot of what you're hiring right now for a GM front office. I think that's more long-term structured goal, while also taking our attention off of the fact that the head coach should have been fired again.
Do you have
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a perfect storm, because I agree with Chris. I think more schools are trending to take more prospects out of high school every cycle because of the 105 roster limit being a thing. And that just so happened to coincide with Florida State wanting to make a change in their front office and not their administration not being prepared to do so in time to have an effect on this high school signing class. So I don't think the people currently in the building, that those decision makers, are to blame. It's just unfortunate because you're telling everyone that you don't think that that group's doing a good enough job of building rosters, and then you just allowed them to basically affect a third of your roster next year. So, and quickly on the whole, they need to get a new front office structure in place before the portal opens, and 2 weeks before, like, they need to, like, that needs to be done as soon as possible, because from what I'm hearing, a lot of these deals for players that have already announced that they're entering the portal or that plan to enter the portal and are working through deals through their agents, those are getting done like in the next week or two, a lot of them. And that's not to say that players won't enter the portal or express interest in entering the portal close to the January 2nd portal window opening, and there will be options then, but you are limiting your options by not having your ideal front office structure in place as soon as possible, because you're potentially missing out on some of those players. And if you're saying that this current collection of people in the front office in your building right now are going to be handling that, then there's a huge disconnect between what they could do versus what this new group could do when they come in. So yeah, it's a mess.
Comes off as it is you said a mess. Is that what you said? It comes off as extremely confusing that the administration has the potential to allow. All right, let's operate. Sometimes I don't like talking about these hypotheticals, but we're operating on the assumption that there's a really decent chance that Derek Ray is fired.
Well, we know that they're trying to hire a GM.
Okay, so maybe he gets demoted or whatever, but like we know that his position and the way he currently works and operates, and I think he would know that too. Like, I don't think that he's naive to what's happening right now. So that means he is going to, and all these coaches and staffers are wired very similarly, where they until the tour duty ends, they work hard. Like that is a thing, and you don't get flips yesterday, and you don't retain the guys. You don't do that without Derek Ray working hard behind the scenes. So like, commendable, that's good. But like, we're operating on a timeline where we assume that he is going to be relieved of his duties as they currently are comprised. Okay, you're going to then allow him to have his fingers on the pulse of the transfer portal, but then you as an entire entity, as Florida State Athletics, are going to say that he's not doing a good enough job to where we want to go, and you're going to relieve him of those duties. But you've created this world where he's making decisions for the 2026 roster, or at least having a role in, to Zach's point, negotiations and constructing it. And also, you're telling Mike Norvell, if you're hiring a GM and that GM reports to Michael Alford, that he's not having full say in personnel. So you're telling these two men that they are in charge of putting together the 2026 roster, and then you're taking that away from them. So you're by your own actions, you're saying you're punting on 2026. I know that's not exactly what's going to happen. They're going to try to be competitive. They're going to put resources at it. These are not dumb people making decisions. Like Mike Norvell has proven at some point in his career to be able to put together a competent roster. Derek Ray at some point in his career has, like, that was only 2 years ago. But you're saying it's broken, but then you're allowing the people who are in charge of the break to put it together again, and then you're going to say that they're now being removed in a month. I'm so confused by this. I know I'm going around in circles of what Chris already articulated. This doesn't make a lot of sense. This is the issue of waiting this long to make the front office hires, but I can't stress enough how little sense it makes to me. And it's bothersome. It's breaking my brain.
It's not just attaining players, it's also making a decision on the roster spots you currently have. So FSU has 32 guys locked in the roster spots after yesterday. Everything else is a decision of stay, go pro, get out of our program because you should go somewhere else, have a better opportunity, or you want to get out of program because you want to go somewhere else for a different opportunity. And also, we need to go get players at this position because we need guys that can help us in 2026 to try to win football games. So we need this roster spot. So you basically have 72 roster spots or 73 roster spots currently that you're trying to determine the future of. And the persons that you have doing that currently between now and January 15th are your goal is to have different people doing that at some point potentially before January 15th. But if you don't do it soon enough, it's very tough to get that all done in a very short time span. The thing is, like, the GM thing becoming a cooked idea late in the season of this is what we're going to do. Cool. I'm all for it. The front office should have been done last offseason. Not disagreeing with that. But waiting for 35 days where you decide not to fire your head coach and then deciding to do this is where they screwed up. And if they had done it after Stanford and had their ability to hit the ground running the moment the season ended, with first and foremost figuring out their current roster, what they want to keep, what they want to go after, and what they want to do in the high school class that can help them in 26 versus long term, and then figuring out what they need to do in the portal while back channeling there, doing what you do in free agency before the NFL can prove the deal, in this case, before college allows the deal to be officially done. That should have been done. The issue is you're trying to do that all in such a short time span. One would hope you're trying to hire the best person possible for a future structure element of your football program that's going to supersede the head coach. But, like, you screwed yourself with the time. That's where we're at. That's what drives me nuts with all of this. Not to damper what they did yesterday. I thought yesterday was a good day for them, all things considered, what they have been the last 2 years and what they were doing in recruiting leading up to the point of yesterday. But they haven't set themselves up well for what they're trying to be in 2026.
I don't want to lower the bar of like what it's been.
I don't want to lower it, but I'm just saying, like, there wasn't dysfunction to yesterday.
Okay. That's fair. I'd agree with that.
Yeah. And just quickly, another thing I wanted to bring up is I think there are complications to firing Derek Ray like soon, because as we mentioned, he has his fingerprints all over the negotiation process for this high school class, which is we believe is over with, and then, as Chris mentioned, retaining the guys on the current roster and also trying to get deals done in the transfer portal. What
he's the lead negotiator, like you said, fingerprints are just to stress. Yeah. Like assistant coaches don't negotiate. I don't think Mike Norvell does.
Yeah. I think Mike Norvell is privy to the negotiations, but I don't think he's involved in the negotiation process. So here's what I want to bring up is, let's say you get rid of Derek Ray today or tomorrow. No one in that building has the connections. And that's not to say that they can't learn how to do this, but it's not something you can do overnight. Is no one has these connections built with all these agencies in the college athletics world on that staff right now, and that is a huge component when that the person that you had leading negotiations for your entire roster up to this point and future players that are going to join this roster is no longer in the building. So I do think that there are complications to potentially getting rid of him and having someone in place to, even if you're going to, let's say they expedite this GM hire, right? The guys that they're, we think they're considering for this role are guys with like exclusively NFL experience, which is fine. That's something that I think has value. But if we're talking about, the actual reality of the situation, it's that, those guys are not going to have those built-in connections with agents, the understanding of what deals are already on the table for the guys that they just signed, guys currently on the roster, what their plans were, and what's been communicated to those agents as far as, the value of what you've basically promised to players on the roster moving forward. So there's a lot of intricacy to what Derek Ray has been basically tasked with doing, and he's basically the only person in the building that has knowledge of all of that right now. I don't think there's a single other person in there that you could say tomorrow, hey, you're taking over this role, and they would be able to just hit the ground running. There would be a process of trying to develop all these relationships and connections and built-in trust with all these agents, and also understanding the entire landscape of Florida State's basically salary cap situation.
Yeah, it's the old hiring a new head coach, but keeping a guy who's a bridge guy to make sure you have the team. This guy knows the team. He knows intricacies and specifics about each individual within the team. It's the same thing, just from the other side of it, negotiations. I think the other thing that this comes down to is make sure everything's in writing, and that's for both parties. That's for FSU and for the student athletes, players, because we're going to run into situations, and it happens everywhere. It happened a bunch yesterday across the country of, I was promised this is what you're actually telling me. So make sure it's in writing.
This is where the timeline, I don't like getting caught up on it, but I can't get over it, is where the timeline, where they screwed up on it. There's no other way that I can rationalize it.
Yeah, you should have either fired your head coach after Stanford and restarted the entire operation, or figured out how you were changing the operation then and there, and then go
back and have that plan in place in part of the event. So there's two things there to that. One is we have to acknowledge it. We haven't talked about it yet, and I think it's an important part of it, is they were, per an ESPN report yesterday, was it Mark Schlabach that had it?
Yeah, Schlabach, yes.
Schlabach or Schlabach?
I don't know.
Schlabach sounds like Mark days. So Mark Schlabach, I think Schlabach, he reported that FSU was one of the teams that threw its hat in the ring for Lane Kiffin. I did put on the Noles 24/7 board a couple weeks ago. I think after they retained Mike, I said I would do it after we knew there were at least two names out of a relatively short list they were interested. One was Lane Kiffin. The other was Rhett Lashley. Rhett Lashley got off the board previously because he re-signed with SMU. Hey, Brett's in the back end. Hi, Brett. All right, he waved. I did not know, and we'd heard rumors even I think right after the NC State game, so before the release and after the loss, so in that window, that 12-hour or whatever it was window, that the LSU had some concern that Florida State was getting in the picture, but I heard it from one person, it kind of went away. I decided to put a ton into it. In hindsight, that was probably kind of true, because the Schlabach reporting is that FSU was talking to Lane Kiffin from around the time of that Stanford game through the NC State game. And once they realized that they couldn't swing it with him, that it wasn't going to work, they decided to retain Mike Norvell.
Yeah, and it was specifically Michael Alford, who has a pre-existing relationship with Lane, as they both worked together at USC in the early 2000s.
I had heard back when, around that Stanford game time, actually before then, that Kiffin was on the, and we knew that Kiffin, if Mike Norvell left for Alabama after 2023, that Lane Kiffin would have been the guy they would have targeted. So we knew that they had a relationship with Lane Kiffin. They liked him. I think FSU went into the process thinking they could get Lane. Based on some of the things I've heard and the dots I can connect, I think they thought that they could have a really good shot at him if that's the route they went. They tried to do it quietly. It's now become public. And that's an interesting dynamic, is now it's out there in the universe that you made a real attempt to bring in a new head coach. And if you had, obviously, your current one would be gone. And so that's now out there in the world. That's interesting. Now, I did not know is that the timeline legitimately went that long, 6 weeks, right? Is that about the span of it from Stanford to?
Yeah, it was, I think, 34 days between statements. Okay.
All right. So it's about 5 weeks. That's really interesting to me, is that it lasted that long. I did not know that, but your plan was that plan backfired. And so now you they didn't have a good plan. I mean, that's the simplest way I can put it, is you did not have a good plan to navigate this. And I know we're still judging it in real time, but the issues that Chris and Zach and I have outlined in this podcast so far, of the timeline you've put yourself in from a front office that to now be your plan B, it's like you waited too late for it. So it's not going to these changes, if they're real, they appear cosmetic, but if they are real and substantial for long term, it means that the 2026 like operation is going to be meshed together of a regime that you've neutered or just fired, and then a regime that has come in to do what still? We don't know, because no one's told us the exact plan. Like, I told myself I wouldn't get mad. It does not make sense to me. I am willing to allow it to play out, but I am extremely dubious of the way it's currently being presented to us and the information we currently have.
Yeah. I mean, so if that report is true, which I believe it is, because I actually watched some of Lane Kiffin's LSU press conference stuff after he got there, and he mentions that 4 schools were involved in his process of trying to figure out what
he said that.
Yeah, and 3 obvious ones were LSU, Florida, and Ole Miss, but
no one follows me on Twitter. I didn't realize that until like
just asked him.
I didn't realize that. I wonder if he followed me during this to try to be like, I'm following FSU media. I had no idea until a day ago. Just anyways.
But anyway, yeah. So
want me to DM him now?
I think that this was true. And you basically signal that it was Lane Kiffin or bust. And if we're talking, and I don't know the extent to Michael Alford's, relationship with Kiffin. Maybe that's something that could have, obviously it turned out to not be something that could help them, overcome LSU and Florida's financial commitment to Lane. I don't think that Florida State was going to be able to offer the same amount of, assurances that both of those schools were willing to give Lane, especially LSU. I've heard the numbers for the staffers there, they're doubling up what Ole Miss was offering to even off-field staffers there.
Do you want me to ask Lane that? Let's ask him. I can ask him one question right now. What do we want to ask him?
Was FSU a real option for you?
Can we ask? Let's workshop this real quick.
But we want to know that, if he was
how much was FSU willing to go over the salary cap if you came here? What was the NIL budget?
Sure.
Chris?
Have at it.
Why aren't you playing with this? This is fun. Oh, was that inappropriate? Sorry, go ahead, Zach.
But yeah, so you basically said that it was Lane or bust, and you basically admitted that you could only sell firing Mike Norvell and spending all that money if you got Lane, and that no other option was worthwhile to make that change. And it's like, so you're admitting that what's going on is not acceptable, but only if you can go and get your top option. I don't understand how you first of all make that determination, because there's no, Lane is not a sure thing. I think he's a good coach, but there are some similar concerns with Lane as there are with Mike Norvell. I do think that
sure things don't really exist, Zach.
Exactly. But that's what I'm saying is they basically said that Lane was a sure thing, and that no other option on the market would have been a sure thing. So that part of it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And then also the timeline. You're telling me that it took you 5 weeks to figure out. I know Lane really drug out the process, but are we going to sit here and think that on the open market Lane was going to pick FSU over LSU's situation? I don't buy that. And I don't know how that they maybe Lane was giving them indicators that he was highly interested, but Lane is Lane. You got to realize that he's playing the game.
I just think what we experienced over the last now 45 plus days, whatever it is, it speaks to the need for action instead of assessment. If you're going to do something, do it. If you're not going to do it, do the other thing you think you need to do. And kicking the can down the road was the worst thing they did, regardless of the ultimate outcome. Whether it was firing Mike Norvell or keeping Mike Norvell, you should have done it, and then you should have moved on to the next thing, whether that's hiring a head coach or hiring a front office. the whole we're going to assess this till the end. Come on, like you didn't assess anything because if you watch the back half of the season, the answer was clear.
Are you saying that we were gaslit? You're the only one who hasn't admitted to this yet, Chris. Do you feel gaslit?
I don't feel gaslit.
Brett, can I bring you in here real quick? Brett, were we unmute yourself? Were we gaslit?
We were gaslit.
Zach, were we gaslit?
100%.
We were Chris.
Lit by the gas.
No, I'm not one to follow with you guys. You know that.
All right.
I'm just saying it was poorly operated in that sense.
Here's what I have to Lane. Hi, Lane. Was FSU willing to go over the salary cap for roster construction if you came to Tally? I've heard mixed things about the admin. It was just a period to hi, Lane. It wasn't an exclamation point. Hi, Lane. I've heard mixed things about admin's stance on the matter. So it could be on record or on background. Either works for me. Just curious. Thanks. Exclamation point.
Send him a photo of your dog.
Did you hear that his dog, that Juice, isn't coming with him?
That's crazy.
The
dog tweeted out like a photo of a tiger, so I think it's fine.
Oh, okay. So it did come with him eventually. Okay. Phew. That was gonna be nuts. I could have been working with old information.
You think it ran from Oxford to Baton Rouge to find him?
Oh, that's really sad.
Right on the jet.
Oh, don't say that. All right. So on the signing class, a few things. Good. I think we weaved in big picture and minutia very well so far. 36 minutes in. On the signing class, we mentioned the Jason Lopez. There was a little bit of drama there, but really you get that done. I think that's big, Chris. That I think we all like him. Zach, especially. I think they have similar hairstyle right now.
Dude, stop.
What?
Broccoli boys. I'm a big Lopez fan. I like him a lot. Good receiver who catches in traffic, tough, productive throughout his entire high school career. The production arc's a little interesting. I also think that correlates to the quarterbacks that he played with, though, to some degree, and also some of the talent he played with, too. And then on the hoops court, I like him a lot. He's a guy that can break things down, athletic, get to the rim. They need some of that injected into the roster.
My left eye started twitching. I don't know what's happening. I think maybe talking about this football program is causing some
I've got a buyer Sonone.
Sponsored by
the Turner Group. The best non-4-star commitment in FSU's class is Trey Bell.
Sonone. I do like Trey Bell.
Okay, so who's yours?
Hey, is Amari Thomas a 4-star or a 3-star?
He's a 3-star.
I think Amari Thomas I have as a 4-star.
Him and Trey are ranked like pretty much exactly the same.
Okay, I have Amari Thomas as I think Trey's ranked appropriately. Now I do think he has a really high floor, and I like him a lot. There's 3 or 4 guys who I think are pretty underrated in this class, and Amari Thomas would be one. Trey Bell I like. I don't think he's underrated. Kyron Maycock was another. I was struggling with that name. And then Judah Daniels is the other, who I am very high on.
You gave him a 99 grade, right?
Yeah, it was a 99, Zach. I think I gave him it was in the 90s. Because that first step is legitimately an elite trait. He doesn't have a whole lot of other elite traits, but he has one. And I think that's worth putting a 4-star stamp on personally.
Judah might be the most intriguing guy to me in the class in the sense of he could really far exceed what the expectations are for him from a ranking and offer standpoint.
I think there are split opinions on him in the building too, which I think is interesting.
That's cool. They're just transparently, Ivans and I had mixed, we were talking about it, and I'm not part of the ranking process when it's a Florida State prospect. But we had pretty far viewpoint on it, and I feel like we've kind of seen eye to eye on a lot of things throughout the process. So that was interesting too, that he is a polarizing prospect because he's kind of undersized. He hasn't had a ton of production until recently, but that first step is killer. It's really cool.
And he's playing D-line exclusively for the first time ever this year. So
boomer bust.
There's that. But yeah, I would buy that. I like Trey Bell. I think he, I was in South Florida and was around him a good amount, throughout the recruiting process. I think it says something to, because he had, at one point other options. Auburn and Alabama were both making plays for him at a certain time, and he stayed committed. He was the longest tenured commitment in the class. He was committed for over 2 years, and it's kind of a similar situation at his high school. He's the first Power 4 player to ever come out of his high school. I wrote something on this a couple months ago, and he's a guy that has been recruited to go to a number of other high schools in South Florida, which is, kind of the norm, right? If you're a dude at one of these, you emerge at one of these, non-traditional powerhouses down there, they want to, get you at Miami Northwestern or Miami Central or one of these traditional powers. And he decided not to do that and kind of make a name for himself and put his school on the map. Got them into the playoffs this year, I think 2 rounds in. So pretty cool story. And I just like him and his mental makeup a lot. And you watch him on the football field and, I feel like it's a position that I have a decent eye for is defensive back. And I think that's just because I've seen a lot of good ones. When I was in Tallahassee, I watched Terrion Arnold, Amari Harvey, a number of these guys that have turned out to be pretty good, at the very least college players, but even, further than that, Ashton Hampton was another one who's doing some good things at Clemson. And then, obviously in South Florida, I've seen a number of DBs come through. And Trey Bell just has that it factor that you look for as just that guy that's has a knack for making plays. And I don't know what his measurables look like as far as whether they're great or anything, or if his testing's that good. But he is clearly the best player on his team, and he's kind of just like carried his team in every facet of the game. And I just love to see that out of a high school player. I think it speaks to that translating well into the next level.
Chris, that's a clear buy for you, right?
Oh yes, yeah. Trey does it every time out. I like the makeup of the kid. I like the makeup of the player. I think there's something to be said about the fact that he stuck with his high school when he was basically the first guy ever to come out of there at this level, because we know schools down there were certainly going to try to attain him and bring him into their rosters. I like him. He's kind of kid I'm willing to bet on, in the sense where, like, I think he'll be at least a very serviceable, good 2D player for you throughout his collegiate career.
There were 2. One was definitely a surprise. Another one was a pretty late emergence. But 2 additions to the class yesterday, both in the trenches. Who do we want to talk about first? Zach,
The big guy for New Zealand.
Oh, there's 3. I forgot. There's 3 trenches. All right.
Yeah,
So
he started the day. So he actually
he really started the day too, because he's in New Zealand. So he sent well before it was actually announced.
Yeah. So there's an 18-hour time difference there. We're talking about Nikau Hepi. Do you think that I pronounced that right? He's a 6'7", 370-pound offensive tackle out of originally New Zealand, but he plays at the NFL Academy in Australia. And he's a guy that is somewhat familiar with Florida State. He visited FSU over the summer, and they actually offered him on that visit. But Auburn is the school that kind of pushed for him and landed him over the summer. And, that kind of seemed like it ended his recruitment to FSU. But after Auburn made a head coaching change, bringing in, Alex Galesh in the last week,
Galesh? I said Golish.
Okay, whatever.
I just made Alex.
Sounds like a pastry.
Golish.
I'd like a Galesh. I'd like a
Galesh. I've heard people pronounce it that way.
Ask him, Chris.
Want
me to send him? I'll send him a DM too.
Yeah, send him a DM. There you go.
Okay. So they made a coaching change, and Nikau Hepi was decommitted from Auburn in the days afterwards. I don't know if they dropped him or what. He kind of referenced things falling apart there. And then FSU was in contact with him within an hour of him decommitting from Auburn, and they basically quickly got him in the fold. And he, like Chris mentioned, he signed I think like Tuesday night for us, but he's 18 hours ahead, so it was technically Wednesday for him. So yeah, as soon as FSU could announce the signing, they announced him at 7 a.m. on Wednesday morning.
Yeah, I love the quote. Waited until yesterday night for you guys. This is from yesterday. Waited until yesterday night for you guys to commit and sign that night. Quite a big time difference, so my signing period was earlier. Told me he's currently 6'7", 3/4, 370.
All right.
He's a big boy.
I do like the idea. Like, you see, I think UConn, Central Michigan a few years ago, like you see NFL Academy type of like overseas offensive linemen. You just stockpile those, and You take these guys with giant frames, and if it works, like it works wonderfully, and if it doesn't, you move forward. So fine with that process. Cool. Who's next?
Cam Brooks.
All right, so that's an oldie but a goodie. I have emotions on this one. I will let you start off, Zach, and I will try to be calm.
Are your emotions, oh my, like you commented on my post about him committing?
Why did that stand out to you?
It was very like reactionary. Reminds me of something I would do. So Cam Brooks, quite the recruitment. If you remember, there's a lot talked about his recruitment right before the summer started. He was a guy that FSU has been in on for a couple of years. He kind of made a surprising decision in April to commit to Cal, and that drew, some criticism of Florida State's efforts in recruiting him from him himself. Like he told me that in an interview that we posted on Knowles 24/7 in May. And it also, people in his camp, people at his high school, there was stuff made about it. I believe, Ira Schofel was talking about it on War Chant at the time. FSU's, lack of communication with him and not going to see him at his school. A lot of nuance to that, obviously, but yeah, things fell apart once all that stuff kind of made it to the public eye. He was originally set, even after committing to Cal, to take an OV to FSU over the summer. Those plans got scrapped. He was removed from FSU's board entirely right before June began, and that kind of ended things between him and FSU. Well, Cal fired their head coach, Justin Wilcox. Is that pronounced well enough for you, Brendan?
I just call goals instead of touchdowns.
Yeah. He granted FSU one of its 2 wins last year.
I love the things that get stuck with Chris, and a talking point for him has been that the Cal game from a year ago with field goals instead of touchdowns just bothered him for some reason with the
Didn't bother me. One of the few moments of joy I've felt in the last 2 seasons.
Oh, you felt joy after that game?
I did.
I didn't think after that. I was like, man, Edwin Joseph is going to
joy everywhere. I was on a joyride.
I thought Edwin Joseph was going to be a badass after that game.
All right, sorry, go ahead, Zach.
So Cal fired their head coach. That led to, I believe, what we were referencing before with some of these recruitments. Basically, Cal made a change, and I think they were not going to honor whatever deal they had on the table for him. So he decommitted. There was a brief interest from Tennessee. He took an OV there this past weekend. Does not sound like they were willing to take him. So he entered signing day on without a school really that he was planning to sign with. It got later in the day. FSU was still looking at guys that had not signed. They saw that he was one of them, did their due diligence, figured out kind of what happened with him and Cal, talked to people around him, did a senior film evaluation again of just looking at, what he had improved at. And I think that we know they made the determination that they were willing to take him. So they got in contact with his camp, and, that ultimately led to him signing with FSU late in the day. Brendan, what are your thoughts?
Why? No, seriously, why? No, okay, no, I'm not going to get emotional.
I'm good with it. They're throwing D-line bodies at the D-line. Like, it is what it is.
Chris, you couldn't find another 6'2", 200. Like, I
don't
blame. Hey, real quick. I don't blame Cam Brooks for being upset. Like, this is not a shot at Cam Brooks as a player. I don't blame him for being upset with the way the recruiting process worked out. FSU made a decision, and I believe that FSU made a right decision at the time to say, hey, this guy's bad-mouthing us publicly. This isn't okay for us, even though I think they were at fault for the recruiting process. It was an instance where both had their point of views, both were right, both were wrong in different ways, and that's fine. That's life. You moved on, right?
But did you really move on?
If now at the very end it became convenient for this to happen for both parties all of a sudden? It doesn't feel good. Maybe Cam Brooks ends up being a really good player. I think he's fine. I think we have him as an 88. I would probably watched him. I was like 86, 87. Fine. He's fine. Why?
There is a little bit of disgusting to it. I wholeheartedly agree with you there.
Chris
But
was gaslighting me, Zach.
this is also college football where like you just have to sometimes deal with it. And my view is, one, you're taking a D lineman, you're clearly throwing numbers at the problem with regards to D lineman. And two, you're taking a kid from a school that's chock full of a lot of good D1 prospects that currently you don't have a particularly good relationship with. So, yeah, maybe this is a bridge that you build.
Maybe. I don't like the optics of it. I feel like you're allowing yourself. They don't care clearly about the optics of it, so it's fine. We can move on. I didn't care for it. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
You get too emotionally invested in the bad these days. You just got to roll with the punches. Just get ready for whatever the next crappy thing that happens is.
Yeah. Okay.
It's quite a mindset to have. Maybe that's healthy.
Chris well known to just move on with the bad stuff. It just keeps on rolling. Yeah. I think we express our Chris internalizes, I externalize. It could probably be balanced a little bit better. Last trench player. Zachary, once again, I'm coming to you because you're 3, 2, 1.
Jamin Pinkney.
Sure.
Is that the last one?
Yeah, I mean, I went to you for the two previous ones. I think the assumption was I would go to you, and you just.
Oh, I didn't know if you were going to bring him up like yourself. I was kind of like pausing because he's kind of your guy.
You're the president of fan club, buddy. Carry the flag. If you're going to carry the flag.
I wrote this in my backstory. I don't think FSU lands Jamin Pinkney without the help of Brendan Sonnone. I'll say that. Did
you write that?
Yeah.
No way, you didn't write that.
I said that FSU found out about Jamin Pinkney due to like his strong start to his senior year, and maybe a little thanks to Brendan Sonnone.
Why do you like him so much, Sonnone?
So, quick, short answer is upside. He is 6'5". We had someone on the board say 2 years ago he was 6'1", and he kind of appears to be someone who's still growing into himself, even the way he moves. But he has his length is freaky. He's a legit 6'5", kind of a string bean build, but he has got really big hands. And so that means that he probably is going to have the ability to add weight too. He's only 217 right now, but his long speed is awesome. He explodes into contact. He is explosive. He builds steam as he gets going in the pass rush. But the thing that really got me interested, guys, was a year ago, his first step was really kind of wonky. Again, he seemed like someone who was growing into his frame. This year, it was awesome. Now, he plays at a low level of competition in South Carolina. I don't dismiss that. I think that helps him out quite a bit where his athleticism shines. But you see someone who now has put together a really good first step in a long frame, which isn't easy to do. The ability to pick up speed is really impressive. He plays really hard. There's a ton of clips of him making effort plays in pursuit. He plays some offense too and looks really coordinated there. So that points to good hand-eye coordination. I think if he hits, and again, there's a lot of variance because he's thin, because it's a small level of competition. But if he hits, and he has really good track stuff too. I think a few years ago ran a 23-second 200 meter, which is solid. And some of his jump stuff is 90th percentile. But anyways, if he hits, I think that's an NFL guy. He may not, right? He may not, but I think Ivans gave him a 90 grade. It's kind of taking a flyer on him when he was still committed to USF. And I saw him over the summer. I think I had an 87 initially based on his junior year, which for a G6 program is really good. Thought he was a P4 player, and then once we saw the senior year stuff, you're like, oh yeah, that's someone who's just getting better. So that's the long answer, but the upside is the short answer.
So as a junior, he had 81 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 10 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and a defensive touchdown. As a senior, he went up in pretty much every category. 91 tackles, 17 tackles for loss, 15 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, 2 defensive touchdowns. To the offensive bit, had 11 catches for 214 and 3 touchdowns as a tight end.
Yeah. And you watch even the fumble recoveries that went for touchdowns, he does it so cleanly and effortlessly. That doesn't matter level of competition, right? He's coordinated. And again, is there anything that has his sophomore stats, Chris? The physical.
He does.
Okay. the physical growth that he's had, I think is just super interesting. And I would imagine you're seeing someone kind of just coming into their own. So I think on the day, that was the one that got me the most excited.
I agree. I think that was the most talented addition they made to the class on signing day itself.
And I don't think they have anyone else in the class who kind of moves like him or looks like him, like a true like potential edge, pass rusher speed type. I do like Franklin Whitley a lot, or is it Whiteley? Whitley.
I think he might end up on the inside though, just the way that body is put together.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting. It depends on what the scheme is, who the defensive coordinator is. To me, Whitley's a guy that can be an inside-outside guy because of the frame and the body type and the way he can amass size. Pickney should be a true like whip around the edge type guy.
All right, sorry, there was a funny text message I got. What else we got, guys?
I think that's it. We're going to be staying tuned to potential staff changes in the next few days, potentially today, tomorrow. I don't know how that works with the consulting firm currently in the building.
We kind of skipped past that. So they do have a consulting firm that has not been contracted to my knowledge, but it is here for the next couple of days. Chris saw Jake Rosenberg on campus at the basketball game, actually, with Michael Alford on Tuesday evening, right? Yeah, Tuesday evening. How about that hoops team, Chris? Want to talk about that?
Yeah, they got to get that thing right. Got to play some defense.
They wanted to play a really hard schedule, and they're kind of living that right now.
Yeah, I mean, they're perfect unless they play the SEC.
There you go. So we saw Jake Rosenberg. He's a former high-end executive with the Philadelphia Eagles. He was actually like Howie Roseman's right-hand man. And I'd actually done a story on Jake back in January. I'd done a story on him back in January about kind of his background. He left the Eagles. He was like really like revolutionary in how they did some cap stuff there. And that's how the Eagles built like a really good team, as they were able to move some contracts down the road, move money around. And now a lot of other teams do it, but he was kind of the financial guy. Felt like he had maybe hit a glass ceiling in the NFL, and so left to start his own consulting firm. It saw this market as like something that could be pretty beneficial for him to put together his NFL ties, his ties with being at scouting and stuff like that, and meeting college coaches as well, and thought he could put together a sort of evaluation team to look at how front offices are operated. He's had contracts with like the Florida Gators, Oklahoma Sooners. So it'll be interesting to see. But he's in town, and it'd be interesting to see if FSU ends up using him, what kind of direction they get. But they are looking. I think that's the news, right? It's like they brought in someone to give an evaluation of how things are working right now. We've heard from multiple people in the building that he's meeting with people in the building these last 2 days. It includes Mike Norvell, Derek Ray, others as well. So be interesting to see. I don't know how that impacts the timeline for changes, if at all. It may not.
Yeah. And my thought is that they are going to make changes. I think it would be more likely that it would be on-field changes first, because I think there's less impact with that when it comes to the portal process and, retaining players and stuff like that. Because I think the front office has far more importance from here on out this month than the on-field coaches. And I think if you're going to make changes to the front office, you need to be ready to replace them with this whatever new structure you have coming, because or else you're going to be put behind the eight ball considerably, like we talked about.
Today is the earliest. Zach talked about this before. Thursday, as we record this, is the earliest that we thought there could be any on-field changes. Zach, you've heard that there's tension, maybe, or angst. Fear.
Well,
I don't know the right word for it.
So here's what I heard. I heard that Mike Norvell basically communicated, I believe, to the on-field staff in a separate meeting. There was an entire staff meeting, and then he held the on-field coaching staff for 5 minutes after that meeting, and basically said that let's get through signing day. Just know that new people are going to be in the building, changes are coming, that kind of message. And I that's kind of what I've been told. As far as the specific timeline for after signing day, I've heard that people in the building think that today, Thursday, is when things could start to happen. But I don't know that to be a certainty that they are going to make changes specifically today. I just think that they wanted to get through signing day as to not shake things up too much to potentially impact recruitments. And now that that's over, I think anything's on the table.
Chris and I talked about this a little bit at the end of the last podcast. Zach, you were not there at that point. You had to roll, but Gus Malzahn is someone that we know has talked to other programs as a head coach, both Arkansas and UAB. Both those have jobs to fill. Since then, we've put on the board. I do believe that Florida State would be okay with Gus moving on. Is maybe the best way I can put it. But I don't know what the options are, right? And when he was at UCF, he's on record. I think he told this to Ira over at War Chant back in the summer. It was either at UCF was either retire or be the OC at Florida State. But now he was apparently talking about for head coaching job. So I'm confused as to what the direction is there. It feels like everything's on the table, but that does seem like that's one of the names we'll be following. That's not me reporting that he's going to be moved on from, but it seems like both sides are kind of looking into that as an option. And we believe that Florida State has talked to potential OC candidates, or at least back-channeled there if they had to replace him, which I also think is interesting. Cade Bell is a name that we've heard. I know that's been out there, but can confirm that is a name of interest for them. That would point to if Gus Malzahn left. It doesn't seem like Florida State has the direction would be Mike Norvell retaking play calling, if that's the guy they're talking to. Now, maybe you swing and miss, and that is ultimately where you end up at, but that does seem like the initial plan if Malzahn were to leave. We will see. I hate saying we'll see, but I think there's a lot of that right now. Last little tidbit that we put on Noles 24/7, again, that was a couple days ago. We believe FSU is exploring the transfer quarterback market. Pretty confident in that they are starting to do diligence on names. Easy for me to say. We're going on an hour here, starting to get a little tired. They started to do due diligence, back channeling, that kind of stuff. I think that's interesting. I think that's noteworthy part of this process, because that would point to what they think is going to happen with the Tommy Castellanos waiver. Also, Tommy Castellanos' value to me goes down significantly if Gus Malzahn is not the offensive coordinator.
I mean, it would be swell if FSU got a really good quarterback in here. I'd be a big fan of such.
I like what Chris is doing. He looks like he has a little kid.
Well, I'm trying to make sure that I don't make Brett have to make another edit after your.
Okay, say it right. I mean, it's at the very end. You can say it.
No, I'm gonna do it. Going making a 2-game streak.
Woo.
No F-bombs, 2-game streak.
Oh, what was this you just sent, Zach?
It's Martin Mayhew saying "Go Noles" over a tweet saying that FSU signed Jaden O'Neal.
He also retweeted a Kurt Weiler tweet recently too.
He's an FSU grad. So.
Oh, okay. There's a lot of FSU stuff here. All
yeah.
Right. All right.
He's an FSU guy through and through. He's also a very intelligent human being who understands football at a pretty high level. Both like the actual game and the inner workings of it all now.
Obvious choice, one would say. Are we done?
Hello.
All right. For Chris Nees, Zach Blaustein, I'm Brendan Sonnone. This is what? Don't make that face, Zach. This has been On the Bench. We'll talk to you guys next time.